After yesterday's tale of invisible asshats rummaging through Terry's place, today I want to take a moment to delve into the minds of a select few of my local citizens. This tale will still hold the twisted supernatural events you have all come to read, but will also show the darker side of the natural human mind and beyond. Living in the country or the boondocks brings its own sort of challenges. It also attracts the best and the worst humanity has to offer. This particular tale will dive into this issue, as well as diving into what these personality traits attract themselves. It's not all southern charm and love, let me tell you. To begin with, being isolated and living in the hills brings certain challenges. Fuck, until recently my town didn't even have its own grocery store. We have two choices for grocery shopping. One, you could go to the local mom and pop store and pay 3 times the normal price, or 2, go to the neighboring county to a real market and get months' worth of groceries at once. Another problem we had before the internet was a common thing is supply lines for machine parts, auto parts, and stuff like that. Even simple shit would take a few weeks to get to us simply because we had to order it from someone who had to order it from someone who, well, you got the idea. It sucked balls. Now, on the other side of the coin, is the fact that my closest neighbours are still, to this day, a 30-minute walk away. I can stand naked on my front porch and not a soul could see my shame. It's wonderful. Yet it also means that emergency help is not always within range to be useful. For that reason, our emergency services used to be set up quite differently than most places. For example, we had one fire department that had 8 trucks, 4 tanker spray trucks and 4 hydrant hook trucks. We would send them to different parts of the county so that we would have at least a half-assed chance of being able to help. We did the same with our ambulances and even the police force. I was eventually assigned to a satellite office outside of town that had jurisdiction to be active in town and the entire county. We had 5 satellite offices and the main sheriff's office, with the tiny steel bar jail cells. We had to spread the force thin to be certain everyone had equal access to our services. I was designated to the eastern quadrant of the county, and as sheriff, I was also the interim chief of police. During my hours off, my wife and I would volunteer for a program like Hands for Humanity. We helped the lowest income families to keep their homes up to par. We would patch holes in the floors and roofs, build porches, and stuff like that. Basically helping the community. We didn't go through any organization. I would see places whilst on duty, and my wife and I would pick a couple every weekend to help. This particular weekend, my wife was under the weather. The cancer hadn't been discovered yet, and the poor dear believed it was just a terrible period. So she wasn't able to work that weekend. I'm so glad of that. I managed to keep the majority of my paranormal shit away from her. I always figured if she was not involved, then she would be better off. Sometimes I wonder if I made the wrong decision. Anyway, I was working on the old man's porch one day, replacing the rotten steps. As I worked, he made fresh lemonade and BLT sandwiches that were made from only the ingredients he grew, even the bread. It was the best damn sandwich I have ever eaten. I just finished the steps and patched up a few boards on the porch, when the place went from normal nature sounds to deadly silent. If you've ever been in the wilderness, then you know it is never quiet unless there's a major predator present. Sheriff, you best come inside for a while now. Shit's gonna get weird here for a few minutes, the old man said. His voice was low and slow, hard like a seasoned vet in combat. Just the tone of his voice made me take him serious. This man had lived a hard country life for 70 years, and he was scared. That made me take notice. I watched nervously as the old man walked into his smokehouse. I watched as he removed what appeared to be an entire smoked lamb and laid it in the yard, directly in front of the big living room windows. I couldn't help but think about how badly I needed to fix those leaky windows for this man. Come on, damn it, Get your rear in gear, Sheriff. We ain't got much time now. Get it together, man. He snapped as he made his way up the new steps into the house. I gathered my tools and laid my hand on my .375 in my holster. I mean, iron goes with everything, right? I followed him into the small house. He sat himself in an old recliner and motioned for me to sit in another chair, directly beside him. The way we were seated, we were facing the window, and I could plainly see into the yard beyond. Be quiet and do not, under any circumstances, make any noise. I don't think we can hold it off long enough. Let it eat and shut the hell up. Something in his eyes told me this was real, and he was a little scared. His cold blue eyes, sharp as a razor, darting back and forth across the tree line opposite the yard, reminded me of my own eyes during hold-offs and gunfights. I knew that look. A look of not only fear, but pure and solid determination to survive and come out on top. I had no doubts this old man could whoop ass if he needed. What exactly is it? What's out there? I asked, whispering as low and quiet as possible. My words barely made a sound as they left my mouth. I watched the old man's face as he was trying to find the words to describe this thing. As luck and God would have it, he did not need to speak. The creature, for that's the only fitting word enough, was gigantic. It was a good 10 feet tall and probably 400 plus pounds. I won't say Bigfoot, but goddamn, if there ever was a Bigfoot, it was this motherfucker. Long brown fur/hair hung from its entire body. Large brown eyes set deep into his skull. I'm sure it was a he. Put many horses to shame, actually. His mouth was wide and thick lips. I could see the razor-sharp canine teeth poke out from his lips as he snarled at the cabin. I swear to you, this fucking thing locked eyes with me and beat its chest like fucking King Kong. So, I decided at that moment to call it King Dong, a name it earned by the grace of God. We watched as it slowly came forth from the trees, its head tipped back, taking deep breaths and looking for the source of what he was smelling. He snapped his head to the location of the meat and lurched his furry ass over there to it. We watched silently as this fucking thing devoured the entire lamb, bones and all. It was both impressive and frightening. When old King Dong was finished eating, he locked eyes with me again and beat his fists into his chest. He knew I was watching, and he was pissed. He stood there staring at me, while taking a massive shit where he stood. When the gigantic turds had finished falling, the thing pointed to them, then at me, and I swear to you, this thing fucking laughed at me. After his little insult, the beast lumbered back into the forest. Within a few moments, we began to hear sounds of nature again. After about 10 minutes of silence, the old man spoke. That was biggin. He shows up once or twice a month, eats whatever I leave for him, then takes off. The first time he came around, I didn't know to leave meat out. He ate my hogs, all 3 of them. I figured a hunk of beef or a sick lamb would keep him happy, keep the other critters safe. What other critters? That was the first animal I've seen here today. Where's your stock? The old man's eyes softened and glanced down at the floor. Well, I think Biggin has a mate. A big old bitch beast came down a few weeks ago and cleaned me out. Biggin must have heard the animal screaming because he rushed down out of the woods and ran to the pens. They growled and smacked at each other. He gestured to the house, then the smokehouse, and then the dead animals. That bitch beast looked over towards here, bellowed, and tossed a half-dead pig in the driveway before walking into the woods. Biggin stood there, staring at her for a while, with his mouth open for a few minutes, before wandering into the woods after her. I just haven't managed to get the cash together to replace them yet, the old man said as he stared out the window. He brought out some moonshine and offered me a shot. I wasn't on duty, so I took a sip. We talked for a few hours about the beasts and how he feels responsible to the community for keeping their appetites satiated. He talked about life, love, and death. He spoke of his wife, now gone, and his son, also gone. And then he talked about how living up here, in the head of that hollow, was his destiny. He felt he was needed by the beasts, to help feed them. I eventually left and went home to take care of my wife. I didn't tell her about the beast. The finger plant on the table was enough to warp her for days, and this would have really fucked her up. I just let it simmer in the back of my mind. A few months later, the old man passed away. My wife and I were the only ones to attend his funeral. I've taken his old job, and twice a month I leave a smoked hog out in the clearing, just in case. There are never any bones or scraps of meat when I go back.